All right, guys, welcome back to Jerk Block Talk. I'm Jason Fernandez here at CrossFit Rife with my man Eric Sweet.
Eric Sweet.
Yep, Eric was getting a serious fucking man pump on earlier, if you guys can't tell. So all the bicep curls were happening. Anyway, here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk a little bit about cueing, and specifically how to kind of manage switching back and forth between visual, verbal, and tactile cueing. When you're a new coach and until you've kind of learned how to manipulate those three types of cues, what you'll find is that most new coaches are predominantly one of those three, and it's usually verbal, just because coaches are not real comfortable enough with doing visual cues, and then you're not necessarily comfortable enough figuring out where to put your hands on people and what's appropriate. Like, that's not appropriate, so don't do that. So yeah, no bro zone. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna have Eric, and today for this video we're gonna work on the push jerk. So we're gonna work on going back and forth, but the general rule of thumb is this. Not general rule of thumb, I like to use this rule, which is if I give a cue twice, whether it's visual, verbal, or tactile, and I don't get a change, I'm gonna switch the cue. I'm not gonna keep giving that same cue. So for instance, I'm gonna have Eric do some push jerks here, and for this, he's gonna make this kind of cue, or this fault pretty obvious. So I'm gonna call the reps, and Eric's just gonna have, he's gonna have a lack of hip extension. So ready and go. Good, and stand and reset. Good, same thing. Ready and go. Good, and reset. So let's say I've given Eric a cue, and I'm gonna give him a verbal cue. We're gonna go through a couple reps, and I'm not really getting what I want. So I give him a cue, he's back in that rack position, he's getting ready to go. I see that he's not getting full hip extension. Ready and go. Good, I'm like, Eric, I want you to jump a little bit higher for me. Okay, and try to get those hips open, and he's not going to get this correction when we go through this. Ready and go. Boom. So we're still not getting hip extension. Eric, stand up a little bit taller. This time, I'm still not going to get the same cue. Ready and go. Good, right, and stand and relax. So at that point as the coach, I'm going to abandon this cue. It's clearly not working. I'm not getting the change that I wanted. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to immediately switch, and I'm going to go to visual. So when I do visual, this is important, guys. He's in the rack position. When you do a visual cue, I want you to move in the line of sight of the athletes, okay, and give them what they're doing and then what you want. So I would tell Eric, you're doing this. I want you to do this. Okay, right? So now, as we go through that visual cue, what's gonna happen is I showed him what was wrong, and then I showed him what I wanted. So now we're gonna see if we get that correction here. Ready and go. Good, much better as far as the cue that I gave him. Okay, go ahead and relax for a second. So, big thing with visual cue, this is kind of one of the few times where it's appropriate to give the athlete, you know, we already did a video on telling athletes what not to do. In the visual, it's important to give them a frame of reference. So I want to show Eric what he's doing incorrectly and then show him what I want him to do. So again, you don't really know whether the athlete is verbal or an auditory learner or a visual learner. So that's where it's important for me to show them what they're doing incorrectly and then show them what I want. Okay, so again, I gave him 2 verbal cues, didn't work. I moved to a visual cue, I gave him that. So let's say that visual cue didn't work. I'll do this in real quick succession. So we'll do a couple reps here. I'll have Eric do some push jerks on my call. Don't get any of these corrections on the visual or the verbal, right? Ready and go. Good. And do that again, Eric, but I want you to jump a little bit higher. Ready and go. Good, so he's still not getting it. All right, Eric, cool. So what I want you to do is, you're doing this. What I want you to do is do that and get your hips open a little bit taller. Ready and go. Good, so I'm still not really getting what I want. So now I'm gonna give Eric a tactile cue. Eric, I want you to jump through my hands when you do this push jerk. Ready and go. A little bit better, right? So again, now if you are not used to watching this kind of cueing, what I want you to do, guys, is you're gonna look at Eric's hips, not at my hands. This is solely for you as the coach and for the athlete. What I want to make sure is that we're getting the hip open when I give that cue. Ready, and go. A little bit better, right? So I still think Eric could get a little bit more hip extension there. Jump a little bit higher this time, Eric, and get those hips open fully. Ready, and go. Boom, and stand and relax, okay? And go ahead and relax, cool. So we did about 5 or 6 reps there, and notice when I did that, I didn't really belabor one or the other. So remember, you have kind of a finite number of reps or a finite time domain in order to get that correction on an athlete. So I don't want to keep giving Eric the same cue over and over. It's not jump higher, jump higher, jump higher, squeeze your butt, squeeze your butt, squeeze your butt. Remember, if you give it a cue 2 times, maybe 3 times, and you're not really getting change on the athlete, switch the cue. Okay, you might even want to switch it faster than that depending on how much time you have on the athlete, what's going on. And like I know Eric, we've been working together a long time. If I know that he is just generally not responsive to a verbal cue, just bypass the verbal cue, go right to the visual and just show him what's going on, show him what you want him to do. Big thing here, guys, is learn to maneuver back and forth between those different cues. If you really, really struggle with one of those 3 cues, really, really good drill that we've done here with some of our coaching staff is, what we'll do is we will have them work for a full class doing as much of one type of cueing as possible. So say, all right, Eric, here's the goal for the class. I want you to try to really not do any verbal cueing. Everything's gonna be visual or tactile. That's the only way that you're gonna get comfortable, figure out what works, what doesn't, is you're gonna have to force yourself to do one or the other, okay? So if you find out that you're just not very good with tactile cues, or you just don't really know where to put your hands or how to do all that stuff, you really have to force yourself to get better at that by doing it, okay? Same thing with visual. If you're just not good at visual cueing, remember, always try to do, you're doing this, I want you to do that, or do this, not that, when you're giving that visual cueing. So I think that's about it, guys, for the cueing. Remember, it's not one or the other. You gotta really learn to use all types of cueing, verbal, visual, and tactile, and learn to switch modes as fast as possible, because remember, you need to get change as quickly as possible when you have athletes that are trying to move. So we can do a couple different things on this. We'll try to do some videos on some different movements, but really learn to shift gears on that pretty quickly so that you can get change on athletes, because remember, you don't really know what the athlete responds to when it comes to cueing. If you have any questions, guys, please put them in the comments. If you like this content, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you really like Eric's pump, give us a like on Facebook, and we'll see you next time, guys. Thanks.